Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inshallah, today we shall discuss sources of international law. In sequence, it is fifth question and in chapter 2. The sources of international law is very important question. The same has been repeated in CSS exams in year 2005, 2013, 2015, 2016 and 2017. Basically the question is, what are principal and material sources of international law? Explain with reference to Article 38 of the Statute of International Court of Justice. Also discuss the formal sources of international law. The intro of the question is, international law is composed of rules and principles which regulate the relations among states and other subjects. The material sources of international law are the actual materials from which the advocates of international law find out the rules applicable to a given situation. These materials are customs, treaties, decisions of judicial or arbitral tribunals, works of jurists, and decisions of the organs of international institutions. Second one is the paragraph 1 of Article 38 of the Statute of International Court of Justice also provide guidance about the sources of international law, and it directs to apply the order in which sources are mentioned therein. The definitions of international law by Professor Stark, Oppenheim and Hyde had also been already mentioned in previous videos, but for refresher again is, international law is composed of customary and convention rules considered to be binding upon the civilized states while conducting their relations with each other, and includes the functioning of international organizations and institutions, their relations with each other and states, and also relations of individuals with states and international institutions. Material sources of international law. According to Professor Stark, the material from which the sources of international law are determined may be divided into following categories or forms. Number 1, customs. Number 2, treaties. Number 3, decisions of judicial or arbitral tribunals. Number 4, juristic works. Number 5, decisions or determinations of organs of international institutions. Formal sources of international law. What are formal sources? Formal sources are those sources from which rules of any law derive their force and validity. As there is no legislature of international law, therefore there are formal sources of international law. It is also the main defect of the international law which attracts the objections to its force, implementation and sanctions regarding breach of it. Divisions of sources of international law. According to the writers and the international law experts, the sources of any law may be divided into two categories, such as formal and material sources. Formal sources are those rules of any law which derive its force, from which the law derives its force and validity. Whereas the material sources are those sources from which materials the law is find out by the exponents, by the advocates of the international law. Under paragraph 1, Article 38 of the Statute of International Court of Justice, the following order of sources of international law is applied by the ICJ while adjudicating upon any issue submitted before it. Number 1, international treaties. Number 2, international custom as evidence of general practice accepted as law. It is very important. This one, custom, is different from as mentioned in formal sources. Here is international custom as evidence of general practice accepted as law. Here for custom, its acceptance as law is necessary. The third one, the general principle of law recognized by civilized nations. Fourth one, judicial decisions and the teaching of the most highly qualified publics of the various countries as subsidiary means for determination of rules of law. According to above mentioned order of material sources, it is different from the actual materials of the sources of international law as mentioned by Professor Starr. Furthermore, the decisions of the arbitral tribunals bearing on legal matters and the decisions or the determinations of organs of international institutions are not included in the order of Article 38. It also includes one material, that is general principle of law recognized by civilized nations, which is not given in the material sources as a material source. Here we will end, and we shall divide the subject of sources of international law in 3 to 4 categories for easy learning and comprehension. Inshallah, in next videos we shall discuss the sources in detail. Formal sources would be discussed in a separate video, in a separate sitting, and the material sources and their implications and their validation, their sanctions would also be discussed in another video, inshallah, very soon. Thank you.